Daina Nathaniel, November 7th, 2022.
So where is home for you right now?
That should be an easy question to answer, right? And yet it's not. I do have a home here in the US, and so I live out in Union County in Monroe. However, I have this split kind of home personality because there's a part of me where Trinidad will always be home. So it's not a definite answer, and I don't really feel strongly about one place or the other anymore.
Okay. So is that where you were born then?
Yes, I was born in Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay. And how long have you been living in the Charlotte area?
26 years. I came in 1996 as a student, actually here at Queen's College at the time. And yep, I only live outside of this area for just a couple of years, 3 years when I lived in Tallahassee when I did my PhD program. That was the only time. Otherwise, I've always lived in North Carolina, you know, so.
Can you describe your experience during the last 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic?
It's been tough. It's been isolating. In many ways, it's been lonely. I have spent the majority, if not all of the lockdown time on my own. So that took a lot to get used to. Also, in my family, we perhaps started off the COVID in the worst way, insofar as a cousin of mine was found dead in his home on Halloween of 2020. He had been telling his mother that, you know, he had the flu, it's fine, and he just had the seasonal flu. But that Saturday morning, when she couldn't reach him, and she sent his son, he was a single father of this child, and sent him to go check on the father, and he found the father on the floor, and dead from COVID. The body was taken away, and in those days, there was so much caution and fear that the thought that we would never see him again, see that body, and no form of saying goodbye. It was just gone, and the child had COVID as well at that time. He tested positive at that time, and so that whole house was in lockdown and nobody could go, and it was just horrid situation. And I because of the circumstances, I was the one who had to make all of the funeral arrangements, and that was in Texas, and I am here. And so just having to go through making funeral arrangements for a funeral that no one would attend because nobody could attend, and trying to mitigate that over the internet, over the Zoom, everything from the news having to be delivered, but also the day that the body was released by the Fort Worth city government, when the body was released and sent for cremation, and on one phone with the funeral director, and on the other, and yet online with the family in Trinidad waiting to hear, and you know, the funeral director saying, okay, we've started the cremation process, and then transferring that, and then it was really devastating. And I am certain that I did not have the worst of it, because that cousin was an only child. So his mother in Trinidad is receiving this news, and she can't do anything. She's in her 80s. She can't do anything for her grandson either. That marked, I mean, even though we had already been several months into COVID at that time, I think it marked a level of reality that while we had seen so many things on the television about the coverage of COVID and the spread and what was happening around the world, experiencing that let me know that yes, people can just get sick and die in their bedroom. That can happen. And it continues to be really tough, because of all the things that come as a result of somebody passing away. And when it's a fairly young person in their 50s and things may not be all straight, because you don't think you're going to die, right? So where's the paperwork, where's stuff, what is this child entitled to, etc. It has continued to be very, very difficult. So
I'm so sorry that you and your family went through that. That's absolutely devastating.
Yeah, I'm sorry about it.
Outside of that experience, could you think of another time or describe how your relationship with family and friends have been affected by COVID?
One of the things for sure is that at least in those early parts in 2020 and 2021, there was so much more communication with because everybody is in Trinidad. While yes, I did have that cousin in Texas, we were not close or anything, but it doesn't matter when you lose someone tragically. But for the rest of the family, I think it was during that time that I really started to insist, and my sister upgraded my mother's phone so that we could have video chats now, because before it was fine, you just do just a regular WhatsApp call or whatever, that's fine. But to have the video time, to be able to see what's going on, and just feeling like I was living this dual life, because I had to make sure to keep myself safe in this country and with the people who are here, my friends and so. But now I'm wondering what's happening in Trinidad and how bad it's happening there, and people getting hospitalized and people getting very, very ill and people dying. Because after Sean passed away, yes, certainly a lot of people passed away too here there. And that maintaining relationship. I also had family members pass away just from, let's say, natural causes. So we have these big deaths in the family, uncles and aunts and things that are just still bring you to your knees if in an ordinary circumstance. I think some of the relationships earlier on were very close because people were calling a lot. They're checking on me, I'm checking on them, or the aunties, I have many aunties, especially, and checking. And it has kind of gone, let's say, back to normal, gone back to normal in some regard. I have not been at home in Trinidad for 3 years. So that's been the hardest part of it, in navigating the two countries and what's happening and what is safe and is flying, is that safe, navigating airports and things with this kind of disease, because the last thing I want to do is to then hop off a plane in Trinidad and take COVID right to my family, particularly my elderly mother. And so that's not, so it has been tough, and so much has changed, and so 3 years have gone by, but I think we've held on as strong as we could.
Talking about like planes and airports and public places like that, can you describe some of your experiences going out in public during the height of the pandemic, like wearing masks and gloves, and what that was like for you personally?
I'm still afraid. I still wear masks when I go to the supermarket and so on. And in most recent weeks, I have been in and out of medical facilities because a friend of mine is ill, and I just couldn't bear not going to see her. So it is very front of mind. At that time, I remember the days of, figuring out, okay, what do I absolutely need in the supermarket? Right, so I make a list. Which supermarket do I know best so that I'm not wandering about, that I can get to whatever aisle easily? And also, where's likely to have the least number of people at a given time. So I was going really early in the morning. Where I live out in Union County, there aren't as many options as there are in Charlotte, so I didn't have to figure out whether it was Publix, Harris Teeter, or it was Food Lion and Aldi, and that was fine, and that was enough. And I remember leaning into going to Aldi much more because they were cleaning their carts one by one before you would take them. But it was so unnerving. It still is. Every time I hear somebody cough or sneeze near me, I stopped going to church, which I do every week. I think masses stopped for a little bit, but then even when they were moved to the outside of the church, I still didn't go because that uncertainty. Because I have been determined I am not getting COVID. I have been afraid from the very start that if I get COVID, I will die. And when my cousin passed away, that made it more real. I don't know what put that in my head, but I have lived with it.
Yeah.
And so every day I walk with that. Every day I think about that. Even though we have freedom here to not wear masks, and a lot of people are feeling free to do so out in public, I don't want to die from COVID because I will die alone.
So sorry that your experience has been like that, for sure. Has, outside of the emotional damage that COVID has taken, has your normal, just day-to-day routines, how have they been changed since March of 2020?
I don't go out very much. There was a time during the height of COVID when it wasn't so. There was a time when the shops were open for a little time during the day. Like I can't even remember some of the specifics now, but just to keep myself sane, really, I would, and of course I was teaching online, which I enjoyed thoroughly, and I think students enjoyed as well, you know, even though it was in that mediated form. I tried to make it as I do in face-to-face classes, but the only way that I could keep up is I would go to so I live far out in Union County, almost to Anson County, and so it is in a very rural area with lots of little small towns, equally rural, but every little town has a thrift shop, some little junk shop. And those were the places I would go because it gave me two things. One, that I could buy some cheap stuff. You know, if I wanted to, I could look around at some equally cheap stuff if I wanted to. But also then I could meet and talk with everyday people who were going through the same stuff as me. And most often in those kinds of little holes in the wall, it's one person who owns the shop. Nobody's coming in there. They've had merchandise sitting there for pennies, you know. But everybody wanted to have a chat, even behind the masks, and separate from the where they would stand, you know, at the cash register. It didn't matter. People just wanted to talk a little, and because we were all suffering in one way or the next. And then when it became apparent that I was not going to go home for Christmas, 2020 was kind of obvious. It's still hard to spend Christmas alone. This was my favorite time of year, besides my birthday. But I decided, because I make a lot of things and I paint and create, I took all of my Christmas supplies and then the little cheapy things that I bought when I would go to these little thrift stores. And those towns are just delightful, just simple, hardworking folk who just trying to make it. That's who they are. And I took all of these things and I started making Christmas or holiday themed centerpieces, you know, things that you lay off on your dining table with Santas and stuff. I made over 30 of them, I made, and each took easily about 8 to 10 hours each.
Oh.
And starting on Thanksgiving Day of 2020, I drove around to all of the nursing homes, rehabs. I found out when the nurses got off at the hospital, when their shift changed around 3 o'clock. I parked in the parking lot and I just gave them out to people, because everybody deserved a smile and everybody deserved. The saying thank you to our heroes wasn't enough. And that experience showed me the humanity of people, just the joy. There was one little small nursing home that I found literally over the railroad tracks somewhere in the back of Marshville, North Carolina. And I pulled up there, and it just so happened that, and in those facilities it's not usually a lot of nurses, it's CNAs or med techs or, you know, those kinds of folks, you know. And so I pulled up and they were having a break, so they were all out on the patio, all with their masks, but they, you know, and I pulled up in the parking lot, which was a little bit of a distance from where they were standing, probably a good 8-10 of them hanging out. And when I jumped out, and I said, yoo-hoo, and they all looked at me like, where is this, what is happening, what is this woman doing? And I called them over, but they were looking a little uncertain. So one lady came across the grass to see what I needed help with, and I popped my trunk and I just said, these are for you. And to see the delight on these women's faces, and it was beyond, and there was no, well, you can and you can't, you want something, take it, go, you know, and have a wonderful holiday season. So I could probably, to tell you the size of them, I could probably carry about 6 at a time in my car. That's to tell you how big they were. So I went out several times and I just found different areas, and I just drove around and I gave it to people and drove around and gave it to people. That helped me a lot, that one event, one experience, you know. And then a second Christmas came by, and I couldn't go home again. So now we're at 3 years, but I'm going this year.
So exciting. I'm so happy for you. It's amazing. I admire the effort that you put in to make people feel so seen and cared about during such a difficult time. I think that speaks a lot for your character, in my opinion. So that's really awesome.
That's so awesome, so powerful.
Yeah.
I'm glad to go home. I was
Me
like,
too. That was my next question.
I was like, do you want to come to my house for Christmas?
Yes.
So you mentioned working online. Can you talk more about your experience of like what work was like, how that affected you, how maybe you think it affected your students as well?
Yeah. So really, and I think we in communication all said it. We were ready. This was not a thing for us. Teach online, sure. Boom, press play. We were on. And so that part was not hard. I think being myself, especially that first spring semester, because we got let out March 12th. So the rest of that semester, so they already had me for a few weeks, so that they already knew what to expect, and so I tried to carry that on. You know, in terms of presence online, and, you know, trying to be sure to continue to have the videos and the conversation, and to keep the students accountable. So no checking out, no just turning your camera off, those kinds of, no laying in bed to come into class. You have to maintain some standards so that students also show up, and that you show up in a particular way. So I always was made up. I will not say what I had on below the waist, but, you know, always made up, always ready to go. And I think that continued. But I was always acutely aware of what students might be going through, what their experiences may have been. That first semester, when a student contacted me after a couple, so by the end of March, let's say 2020, I realized he didn't come back to class, so I kept reaching out to him. Eventually, he responded and he said, well, when the COVID happened, when COVID hit, both of my parents lost their jobs. And the first thing that we had to let go of was internet access. So I have no way of logging in. It's those kinds of stories and what people were just feeling, and they were feeling isolated and feeling disconnected, and the many students who were now responsible for taking care of little ones, younger siblings in particular, or the students who got a chance to keep working at whatever job they had, simple job that they had, or so, and yet that being the only income all of a sudden because others in the household lost their job. You see, stuff like that I never wanted to forget in the service of teaching content in a course. So I would ask students a lot, how are we doing? This is a safe space. What do you need? Those kinds of things. I would ask them a lot, and that continued because this fall of 22 is my first semester back face-to-face. So I stayed remote the entire time for my own safety in many ways, but always try to remember that you don't know what may be happening in somebody's background life, who they've lost, have they been sick, and not to ask things that might be intrusive, but to give a space where people feel free to say, you know what, I'm having a hard time. I also just give, and I have continued to, whether I announce it this way or not, I do give mental health days. I just do. I read the room, read a virtual room or the physical room. Students don't have it. What are you trying to prove here? They don't have it. They're exhausted. They've hit the proverbial wall. And to really extend grace in that way, extend grace, because we need it, and I think we needed a reminder of it, but that's what we needed. COVID provided that reminder. We must continue extending grace from now into the future. We have to. It's just a different kind of life now, and people are having a hard time in all kinds of ways, and we don't have the privilege of knowing what those hard times are for everybody. So let's just lead with grace is what I hope for.
I think that's awesome. I think that's a great segue into my next question, which is, outside of grace and giving grace, are there any other good things or good lessons that you can say that you learned through this experience? I don't know if I learned brand new lessons. I think the lessons that were living latent inside of me, that I probably wasn't given enough food and light to, those things started to come alive. So not being so focused on things and stuff and acquiring things, not to be so focused on what was the next thing and the next thing and the next thing to do, but to really be present. And some of that is really tough when your society that you're living in is not like that, and people have just taken off in this fast living again, and COVID allowed us to slow down in so many ways. I have also, I'm determined to be mindful about the hidden struggles, because this kind of work, it is about people first, but it's not just this job, right? It is when you go to the supermarket and somebody is particularly mean, or as I've been dealing with so many hospitals and nursing staff in the last few weeks with my friend in hospital, that they may be having a hard day too, to just stop ourselves from the quick judgment. Just say, wait, I don't know what this person has going on at home. They could just be an idiot right now. It's true. But I find that generally that's not the case. There is something that somebody is going through, and I don't want to be the one that they encounter to have made that experience worse, because I feel I haven't gotten what I need from them in terms of pleasantries, etc., etc. So
I think that's the biggest thing, and I don't want to forget that, because I think a lot of, just in regular conversation, a lot of people are saying now, oh my gosh, when you go to the store or when you go to the restaurant, whatever, people just, they don't want to work, and they don't have, good customer service, and they don't. I just think we're worn down.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
How would you say that, or would you say that COVID has, or this experience that you've had through COVID has shaped you as a person?
I'm not sure yet, because I don't see COVID in the past tense. I think now it's conflated with the seasonal flu, as well as RSV, that seems to be really bad with children at the moment. So I'm not ready to speak about COVID in the past tense. I think in terms of continuing to shape me, I've become even more self-sufficient, and I was before, but I've become even more of that. I enjoy my friendships and connections in the US, that's true, but I don't overly rely on them. I don't feel like I breathe as easily as I may have done before COVID. I feel the need to be on guard. And I do experience a chronic level of anxiety that's often unexplained, but I have to live with it. So, every day it is, okay, well, anxiety, you have to go along with the ride because we got to go to work now, or we have to do such and such. So you can sit right there, but that's it. So the shaping doesn't feel like it's a positive shape. It's almost made me a little more cautious and anxious, and I don't want that to be forever, but that's where I am right now.
Yeah. You said going along with the ride is something I feel like everyone's had to do for the last 2 years, with all these recommendations coming and going, rules being placed here, you have to wear masks here, you don't. How have those situations and rules changing and recommendations and requirements changing, how has that experience been for you?
That part did not bother me in terms of my adoption, right? Saying, okay, well, gotta wear a mask, gotta wear a mask, sure. It bothered me that others didn't and don't. So that now, even though there are no mask requirements anywhere that I can think of, at least not where I navigate between Mecklenburg and Union counties, that people still with a sniffle, a cold, a coughing child, a child with a runny nose, whatever, that they're not conscious enough to say, what, this might be for the next couple of days, let me wear a mask. Let me put a mask on my child, because public health requires all of us to buy in. And so it's not hard for me. I knew it would be hard, particularly as somebody who has asthma, to teach with a mask on. That I knew would be hard, and some other mitigating circumstances, but going out and having to wear, like I say, I still do. And people look at me strangely now, and that's the shift, right? Before, you might look at somebody who wasn't wearing a mask, like, okay, why aren't you wearing a mask? And then there is the case of, well, I'm wearing a mask all the time. In church, everything, I'm wearing a mask. Once I'm not here, I usually wear a mask. And then people thinking, oh, did you not get vaccinated? No, I got them all. I have all 5, right? So the perception that mask wearing, the shift in perception in mask wearing, I think just blows my mind. I wish we had stayed with that a little bit longer, to be honest. And we weren't so quick to just give it up. Like I said before, I still don't go out a lot. Even when I get invitations to people having things at home, I'm very, very cautious about going to things like that, because this is what I've always said since the beginning of this thing. My belief is that if something happened to me, if I got really sick, none of these people are coming out to Union County to make sure that I was all right. And I know that. They're not coming. They don't come now because, oh my God, Daina, you live so far. They're going to come when I'm really sick and I have something that's contagious or so. I got sick on this campus one day. Gosh, time goes so quickly. Maybe about 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, I got very, very ill. To the point where I was taken to the emergency room. Not even just urgent care, I was taken to the emergency room. I don't remember what they treated me with, but I was really, really ill and I was roasting with fever. And the person who had taken me from here to the hospital brought me back, dropped me off at the parking lot. And then I had to drive an hour home. As a matter of fact, I was stopped by a police officer when I went around Sharon Road because I was probably 35 and back there was 25. So and he pulled me over, and I remember I just took up all of my hospital papers and said, "Officer, I don't know how I'm getting home, but please forgive me." I don't think I asked him not to give me a ticket. I just came out of the hospital and he let me go. And that was way before COVID. Who knows what I was ill with at that point. Could have been some kind of flu or whatnot. But in the middle of nothing, and no one would take me home, far less to come and see or check if I had everything. There's no way I would believe, with this verity that COVID brought, that would happen. So I have to keep myself protected. And have successfully done so.
Well, that's amazing. What, in your opinion, and I feel like this is kind of a difficult question because things are so uncertain and they have been so uncertain for the last 2 years, but if you had to predict, what would you say that the future is going to look like surrounding the pandemic specifically?
I am concerned that people are going to become more cynical because now it's very rare to find anyone who has not had COVID in particular. It's rare. People have had it, they've had it severely, they've had it mildly. You know, I'm one of those anomalies, to be honest. And my mama and my sister and my brother-in-law. I don't know what it is, but knock on wood and thank God we have avoided it completely. But I think because so many people have gotten through, have had it twice. Some people 3 times I know have had COVID. There's some cynicism about those of us who continue to want to be very cautious. That cynicism does not help us. That cynicism does not bode well for public confidence that we are living in community and as community. And that is my concern, that, oh, I had the COVID, it was fine, you know. I felt crummy for a couple of days, it was fine. That sentiment is the one that scares me the most. Because, like I said before, I don't know what will happen if I get it. My cousin Sean had been in the Marines for over 20 years. He was as fit as they come, and strong, and it took him down like that. What about little old me with all of my considerations, you know? So